Chirohustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Community Healthcare Resources, Life Chiropractic College West, TrackStat, and MSculpt. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 457 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Juster.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Craig Pearson. And if you want to hear the story about how to support the future of chiropractic, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I have Craig Pearson coming in today. I've had the real opportunity to get to connect with Craig over the past month. We spent some time together at the Colorado Chiropractic Association, and I had a chance to hear about his path to leadership within that group. Found out that he is associated with Palmer Rugby. And for all of you that are watching this that don't know, the Palmer Rugby group helped start my chiropractic career. So bravo to the Palmer Ruggers, the old boys, for helping me get the big idea. And as we got to know each other, we've shared a lot of messages about life and abundance. And that's what chiropractic is. It brings people years to their life and life to their years. And before we jump in with Dr. Craig, I'm just going to let everybody know the big why behind our show. Why do we do what we do? Because no one else could do what we do. And what we do is we protect freedom of speech within this platform, and medical freedom, family freedom, people to say what's on their mind. And I was once asked Dr. Craig, like, have you ever not produced a show? And I said, no. Over the 1,100 interviews that we've ever interviewed, I've never not released the show. Only thing is if it's bad audio or if the internet was giving it trouble. And then we got them rescheduled. Those are the only disqualifications, but I've also always let people share their mind, which I think is a very powerful thing, is not censoring people. And the other part of what I think is significant about our show is we do protect BJ Palmer's sacred trust. And I always urge people that listen to our show to go and do a search on the internet for their favorite search engine and find out what BJ Palmer's sacred trust is. And it's his last words. And anybody that knows it knows I'm very sincere about guarding that well. And we do support subluxation-based chiropractic, which is something that, for lack of a better reason, we have to mention, because there's a lot of people inside the profession that don't have the same principles and have maybe lost their way and want to reformat chiropractic. And I don't want that. And then we do believe that when someone gets adjusted, it connects man or woman, the physical, to man or woman, the spiritual, which is what makes chiropractic so darn amazing, because it gives people hope and it gives them their lives back. So now that I said that, all the preamble is complete. Dr. Craig, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it. Such kind words. Appreciate it. And I appreciate you loving on our profession.
Yeah. Like, I was 30 years old and there was a crossroads I had to come to. It's like, what was I going to dedicate the rest of my life to? And I don't know. A lot of people don't know this story, but I was going to be a sports commentator for soccer. That was my path in life. I was going to be a commentator for soccer, or football, as the world knows it. Right. And that was like, yeah, I mean, that was something that I was really passionate about. I wanted to be the guy that talked about each player and the flow of the game. But then I was like, what really matters? Well, the world of health mattered to me so much that chiropractic, sometimes, Craig, they'll say, did you choose chiropractic or did chiropractic choose you? I think for me, it's a bit of both.
Yep.
It's not binary.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I would say the same for me.
So let's jump into it, because I think that this is a great chance for you to reintroduce yourself to friends, family, colleagues, and people that you take care of, your patients or practice members, whatever you choose to call them. And some people over the past 25 years may have not had the right idea, or may have forgotten who you are and how you became a chiropractor. So let's share that part first before we go into the next questions.
All right. Do you just want me to run with it?
Just run with it. How did you get
Okay.
into the beautiful profession?
Well, so as you probably can tell from the accent, I'm originally South African, and Jim did mention that I am now a US citizen, have been since 2010. But the journey started out way back. Most South Africans are presented at a very young age with the sport of rugby. And so, I lived on rugby. My father was a lover of rugby. He had played to a high level, and I was sort of following in his footsteps. And as I progressed through various age groups of playing the game and loving on it, and playing some quality ball, I started to develop like this massive chest pain, and I was convinced that I had a heart condition. So I went about my way trying to figure this out without letting my immediate family know about this, because I was concerned they were going to stop me from playing the sport that I love. So, and as it went on, I was visiting with doctors and whoever I could, doing all sorts of stress tests. And every time I left the place, I was offered some medication which just didn't seem reasonable or logical whatsoever. And ultimately, I got to a place where somebody told me I should consider going to a chiropractor. Now, I had some minor chiropractic experience in my background. Turns out my mother had been seeing a chiropractor forever, but never really shared it with us. And then a good friend of mine ahead of me had gone off to Palmer and come back. And I had this sort of side knowledge of chiropractic, but I really didn't sort of look into it until somebody said, "Oh, well, you should have this thing checked out." After many visits with other professionals, not getting any results, and convinced I was going to die at a young age, I went off and visited with a chiropractor. And I don't think we were even halfway through the initial exam when he found this problem in my ribs and triggered all the same symptoms. He adjusted me a few times, and within, I'd have to say, probably 2 or 3 visits, I was 50, 60, 70% better. And the light bulb went off. And at that time, when that happened, I was midway through a chem degree. I initially wanted to be an Air Force pilot and had passed all the exams and was accepted, but then I missed the intake. They told me to go and do some science classes before I took an intake, and then stumbled in chemistry. I then decided while I was in chemistry, I'd rather finish this before going off to the Air Force. And so the process went. I ended up in the Air Force, was a couple of years, as you mentioned earlier, as we spoke earlier, military experience, right toward the end of when we were fighting a war in Angola. I never saw any action. I know a number of people who did. I didn't, fortunately, see any action from that, but we were actively fighting a war and then that was coming to an end. I then worked as a chemist for a few years with this mindset that I would save money to go to chiropractic college. And it was continued, played rugby, so much better than I was before, but now I had this thing about chiropractic. I needed to do this. And South Africa was taking some downturns. We were right in the situation where there was an election coming up. The currency was being challenged. And I just figured it was now or never. Bought a one-way ticket through Belgium into the US. Found my way to Palmer College. I wanted to be at Palmer College because it was the fountainhead. I'd done a ton of research on different colleges. It come down to between Life and Palmer. because there was a possibility that I could have a rugby scholarship, and I needed that to get through school. Chose Palmer because of the Fountainhead, Iowa, and never looked back. I mean, I love that decision. I love the history of Palmer. I looked into DD and BJ Palmer and was just fascinated by this alternative paradigm of chiropractic relative to the world I was in with chemistry and medication and all that type of thing. So thought I was going to be on this journey without ever having to look back at chemistry again. It was like, completely new life. Got onto the rugby team at Palmer. There was a whole journey there. At the time, the rugby team was pretty strong. We had some great characters on that team. And we went to the national championship in 95. With that, 95 and 97 historically were big years for chiropractic. 100 years of the school, 100 years of chiropractic. And so the philosophy at that time was fascinating. I was in and around, the conversation was on the committee to actually put the epigrams back up around the college. That was also interesting. So trying to get BJ's epigrams back up on the walls of the college. And it started there when I was in school. So it was, and now if you go around the college, they're all over the place. So that's just a fun side note of the journey. And then as when I left chiropractic college, I had a bit of a loan that I didn't want to carry back to the South African failing currency. So looked around the US, figured this was the place to be. Had offers in numerous places. Eventually chose Colorado, came out here, met with a number of doctors, had met with 13 docs. 5 docs offered me a place, ended up in Boulder, and that's it. I'm still here.
I just have to ask you, based on the journey, what was your initial response coming from South Africa to Davenport, Iowa?
Oh, geez, shock. I mean, shock on so many levels. Like, first off, just no terrain, right? Just flat. Like, where are the mountains? South Africa is pretty mountainous, and so to not see mountains or any elevation whatsoever was crazy. I was in a class also. So I suddenly found out, like, I have a postgrad degree in organic chemistry. So I get there to Palmer and thinking, oh, okay, we just got to sign up and we're going to be just running. Oh, no, you've got to do prereqs. Off to Scott Community College. I'm going to do these prereqs. So I'm signing up. I actually signed up for, they wouldn't allow you in the summer break to do 12 hours. I convinced the registrar to allow me to do 18 hours. And I needed 24. So I then went off to the University of Iowa and signed up for 2 online courses at the University of Iowa. So I was doing 24 hours of school to try and get into Palmer. And these are all level 1, right? Because I've got a postgrad degree. I was choosing the easiest classes. One class I picked was called American Family. And I had to go down to the bus station, the Scott Community College above the bus station, downtown Davenport, where you had a view of Illinois across the river. And I was introduced to this at the back. I sat at the back of the class. And one of the reasons why I chose this class was there was no test, right? You just had to attend, right? So they start introducing from the front of the class. Eventually they get to me and I say who I am. The entire class just whirled back to look at me because of my accent. So, like, every single person in that class but myself was a woman, and apparently single moms and so on, and their families were all sorts of legal trouble, and they were getting their credits to continue getting money from the welfare system. And sometime during the class, somebody said, well, who has been to Illinois? I think most of the class had never been to Illinois. And we were looking at Illinois across the river. And that was just mind-blowing to me. I just couldn't fathom.
The interesting thing, Dr. Craig, is it's still true today. It's
Wow.
like the Mississippi River is like a barrier between Davenport and Moline. And you know, there's so many things I'm interested in talking to you about, but what was the weather shock like when you had your first experience of like a Midwestern winter?
Oh, that was that. I was intrigued by it because I'd experienced a little bit of snow in New Zealand. I spent a year living in New Zealand at the age of 17, 18. So I'd seen it on the mountaintops, but I've never seen snow before, like just coming down where you're at, right? And so I asked South Africans, like I figured like the winter would be bad. Like I'd seen enough American movies to know that the winter was going to be bad. So I called ahead to say, what should I bring from South Africa to deal with the winter in Iowa? And literally, I just got guffaws. Like people were just laughing at me. They said, "No, just come here. We'll figure it out when you're here. Do not bring anything for the winter." And yeah, mind blowing. I think my birthday is in January, and my first birthday in the US, it was minus 63 degrees Fahrenheit wind chill, where the warnings were going out like every 10 minutes. You can only spend 30 seconds outside, otherwise your face will burn, basically. Yeah, so shocking. Yeah, absolutely shocking.
So many great things. I could ask you more and more stuff, but let's get into chiropractic a bit more. So coming to Palmer, getting into practice, how did you decide on the type of technique you wanted to practice in?
So I'd only, in South Africa, I'd only ever had sort of what we call diversified experience, diversified Gonstead. Those were the two techniques that I'd run into in South Africa. And that was powerful enough to change my life, right? So I was traveling across the world to do chiropractic just because of diversified and Gonstead. I mean, that was my experience. And obviously, what are there, 20, 30 different chiropractic techniques taught in 17 colleges in the US. And if those techniques exist, they work, right? So they've been around for a number of years. I arrived at Palmer, and I wasn't there just a few days. And I met with somebody, in fact, actually a South African guy who was about graduating, and he took me aside. In fact, I think we went for a drive, and he started telling me about this SOT, sacro-occipital technique, that I should really look into it. It was powerful. I could, there's no limits once you get into SOT. So I was like, oh, intriguing. But I kind of set it aside. Like my experience was diversified, and that's what I was going to be happy with. But as I kind of got into Palmer, I was like, you know what, this is my second career. I'm just going to reach out and try and find everything I can about chiropractic, every technique. So when it came to doing extra courses at the college, I was signing up for everything I could. I was going to every meeting. I got to hear some of off campus. I got to hear some of the greatest names in chiropractic philosophy who would show up off campus and talk about chiropractic philosophy. I tried to, as much as my time would allow. Obviously playing rugby at Palmer, which is a scholarship sport, so there was a whole requirement there. As much as time would allow, I tried to attend everything chiropractic around the campus, and I think Palmer, from that perspective, was amazing because such a large college chiropractically, so a lot of speakers there, a lot of diverse thinking in terms of chiropractic. And so extremely grateful for the chiropractic education that I got at Palmer. And I was determined to study hard. You're doing 32, 33 credits a semester. So it's a full-on commitment. It's a wonderful experience. And yeah, Palmer, like to your point about Davenport, Iowa, I think that's one of the things I'm grateful for. I think if I was at Life, I probably would have partied a whole bunch more. But I mean, there was enough partying going on at Palmer, especially with the rugby team. But I was committed to getting a good education. So I'm very grateful for being at Palmer and learning the technique that I did. And then as soon as I got beyond chiropractic college, then I pursued that technique, which now I'm a certified craniopath. So I'm extremely grateful for the path I've been on. And people will say, well, what is SOT? So it's really more of a diagnostic system which incorporates the organ system. So there's CMRT, chiropractic manipulative reflex technique. So you're adjusting the organs relative to spinal reflexes that you find. So that's powerful in itself. But then it's talking about the pelvis. You're obviously working from the pelvis to the cranium mostly. I mean, as an ascending disorder situation, it can be descending disorder as well. So we're adjusting in whatever manual means possible. Like, so you can be adjusting Gonstead. My mentor, Dr. Jonathan Howard, amazing man, huge in Europe in terms of SOT and chiropractic. He used to have a high volume practice, primarily doing Gonstead, was a Palmer grad, and then converted his entire practice to SOT. I forget what the timeline was, but converted his entire practice to SOT, chiropractic, and craniopathy with Gonstead adjusting. So the manual adjusting that we do can be anything: diversified, side posture, Gonstead, drop tables, activator. It can be anything, but it's just using a technique to analyze how the body's behaving, primarily from the pelvis ascending, because it's easier to adjust a 3-bone structure versus a 22-bone structure being the cranium on the other end. But once you clear out all of that stuff, then you can be adjusting the cranium. And so, yeah, super powerful technique. I love the technique. And yeah, I can't say enough about it.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Community Healthcare Resources, Life Chiropractic College West, TrackStat, and MSculpt. Let's hustle. So, I mean, there's so many conversation lines I want to take you on, but let's go to the students, because I think that the students are the future of this profession. And I don't need to ask you where the profession's going in 20 years, because if the students aren't equipped, the profession's going nowhere. So
Right.
Let's talk about advice that you might give to the students as they're in school or first year out of school.
What I would say to any young chiropractor, and I call students chiropractors, once you've made that step, you just haven't graduated and licensed as a chiropractor, but once you've made that step where you've made a massive, I mean, some students are not, if they're generational, like multi-generational. I mean, so beginning of Palmer, one of the first anatomy classes we were in, we had a guy with the name of Mikau. I believe he was a Dr. Mikau, but doctor of anatomy, not chiropractic. He went around the class asking everybody to introduce themselves and what brought you to Palmer, what brought you to chiropractic. And that stuck in my head, as I listened to everybody going around the room saying, oh, I was doing such and such, chiropractic saved me. I was doing such and such, chiropractic saved me. I'm a 3rd generation chiropractor. I've got 25 chiropractors in my lineage before me. It was just a given. I'm going to be a chiropractor. It's a way of life. So you either were somebody who was saved from chiropractic, or you were in the lineage where there was no alternative. It was just your life. And I found that fascinating, for one. But for chiropractors coming through school now, there are a few things that I'd say, if we want to keep this profession and save this, one, know the history. Know that chiropractors back in the day were going to jail because they were doing chiropractic and living the life of a chiropractor, adjusting and calling it a subluxation and adjusting the subluxation. And we need to know that. we need to, and even for chiropractors on the board that I led in Colorado, know about Wilkes versus the AMA. Know that the AMA, the American Medical Association, tried to destroy chiropractic as a profession. They tried, and it was proven that they were doing it. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and chiropractic won that case. It started in the 70s and ended in the early 90s. I mean, that's how long these chiropractors fought to clear the name of chiropractic and hold it as an independent chiropractic profession, adjusting the subluxation. And people, all chiropractors need to hold on to that. Why did they choose to go to chiropractic school like all those people I heard in Dr. Mikhal's class in my first semester at Palmer College? People need to know why and remember why they went to chiropractic college to start with. Not what you decide to do with chiropractic when you graduated, how your brain is influenced by all the different people that come alongside you and say, oh, you should do this in your office and you should do this in your office. Remember, you went to school for the subluxation and the adjustment that corrects that subluxation or assists your body's innate to correct that subluxation. That is the power and the philosophy of the chiropractic. Sure, there's a science and an art to chiropractic, but people need to hold on to the philosophy of chiropractic because it's a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift is what allowed any of us who entered chiropractic college to figure out how we were helped along a failing road to where we were actually becoming healthy again. And I can't say more about that, like in terms of how powerful that is for us. And we're dealing with the nervous system. We're not moving bones.
Yeah. I love that quote. We're dealing with the nervous system. We're not moving bones. And as a segue conversation, leadership. I know you've done a lot to support the state of Colorado through leadership. Why is it important for all chiropractors to support their state associations and to step into leadership roles?
So, I have this thing, obviously I've had many lives, if you will, before my chiropractic life, as you mentioned in relative to my bio. And I had other ideas for what my life would be. But, and we spoke earlier before this meeting, like my life has been a journey and life is a journey. So you take different paths as you go along. But every day we should wake up and be grateful for where we're at and be grateful for, especially chiropractic. I mean, if you found chiropractic, how grateful should you be? For me, I just have immense gratitude that I can do what I'm doing on a daily basis, helping people, caring for people, loving on people. And that's, so when you are grateful for where you're at, you can then take it a step further to how you can care about others using that gratitude. And the people have gone before us in chiropractic, setting up associations to bring us together so we can actually discuss how we can help each other move forward in chiropractic. And we as chiropractors, if you get isolated alone, you will feel vulnerable. But associations allow us to come together and work together as a force to help chiropractic. And it's for every chiropractor. There's not any chiropractic. And Colorado has a wide scope of practice. And in the last few years, I think 2 or 3 years ago, the year before I was the president of the Colorado Association, I was obviously president-elect at that time. And Doug Jones was our president. And we were fighting to protect our Practice Act. So, and fortunately, our Practice Act is broad. I mean, we have, some people who are just purely subluxation-based chiropractors, and I know you've heard me talk that way. I will do extra things. I do nutrition in my office. Thoughts, toxins, trauma that's the whole adage of chiropractic. There are three things that we look at for general health, and it's thoughts, toxins, trauma, right? And then you can convert that into modern day terms, and that's spiritual, mental, physical structure, environment, chemistry, nutrition, supplementation, whatever you might call it. Like, it all comes into that. And we need to know that those aspects of health are critically important, and we need to incorporate that. And our Practice Act in Colorado incorporates all of that. It allows us to be diverse. So we don't want anything to change in our Practice Act. So if you want to do some functional medicine and adjust people, or you just want to adjust people and don't do any functional medicine, that's your choice as a chiropractor. But the Colorado state law protects us in doing that. And so we need to maintain and make sure that that continues. Who does that for all the chiropractors in Colorado? The CCA, the Colorado Chiropractic Association, is the group that makes sure that nobody else attacks and breaks us down from a legislative point of view. So we have to protect our Practice Act and everything that we do on an ongoing basis. We need people to do that. So that's what your association does. So the association also takes care of chiropractors as soon as they have an issue. Who you get a call once you're in Colorado and you have an issue of any sort? Where should I open my practice? How do I get my license? All these things, people go to the association. So really what you want to be doing, like everybody, the moment you come, if you're going to be a chiropractor in Colorado, not only does the Colorado Association support chiropractic within the bounds of Colorado, but we also support other associations if they come under stress. Recently, we supported the Texas Chiropractic Association when the medical association down there attacked them, and they're still under attack. And we go and support them. So it's about helping our brothers and sisters in chiropractic, and don't sit on the sideline and allow other people to fight for you. Get in the fight as well. And it's not just a fight. It's a brotherhood, sisterhood, where we actually support each other in the way that you practice. And I stressed it the whole time through my leadership that there is no chiropractor better than another chiropractor. If you graduate chiropractic school and you have a chiropractic degree and you're practicing the chiropractic according to the state laws, the association will support you. So if you get into, somebody stresses you, somebody complains about you, we will come to your support if you're practicing the way you're meant to practice. And that's why I couldn't encourage more people to, everybody, I think we're, of the licenses in Colorado, I just learned, we were just at Chiro Congress, I learned that we're at about 25%. We've got the biggest membership by far. There's no other association as large as ours in Colorado. In fact, I don't know if there's another one that actually has an organized association. And we're only at 25% of our chiropractors. And that's shocking, because 75% of the chiropractors in Colorado are allowing 25% of the chiropractors to fight every battle that they might have. That's shocking to me.
And, you just mentioned that we were together at the Chiropractic Congress. That was down in St. Louis, and I had a chance to meet with many executive directors of different states and get a chance to know them and see how I could help them as a non-chiropractor and as somebody that could be a delegate for them to, share messages about protecting and supporting this profession better. And I think it's a very unique opportunity, but I would have to just encourage people that most of the people that I spoke to told me cases, just because that's what comes up is people share with you what's top of mind to them. But most of the people I spoke to talked to me about cases of people that are part of a state practicing with their license, and they get their continuing education credits and they keep their license current. But when something happens, they're not a member.
Right.
And then they want the people that are a part of the executive board and a part of the leadership of that state to go and to work for them. And
right.
they're not paying their dues for that support. And
right.
then they want to tell everybody that there's a fire And they're like, well, why aren't you supporting us, me, the practitioner in your state? And I think they've fallen out of favor with being a contributor. And I think that we just have to impress upon people that most of the people, I'll just tell you, most of the people I talked to across 8 different states while I was at that association event with you, the Congress event, the common theme was, I'm in trouble. Please help me. What do I do? Oh, but you're not a due paying member. So now we got to get you to do that. And then we can see how we can help you. So I think a lot of times people want to tell you that the fire started within their personal life and then say, can you help me now? Instead of
Right.
just being, very considerate to the organizations that support them.
Right. So exactly right. And the same with us, right? So we had last year, well, when I was the president, we got mandated by the city of Denver that all healthcare personnel within the city of Denver city limits had to mandated to get vaccines, right? And I don't care necessarily what your position is, whether you want to be vaccinated or not, but that's a personal choice, right? So, and everybody should be protected by their personal choice. So I, along with our board, we basically countered the city mayor because the governor had kicked it down the road and allowed, I think they call them home state cities or something like that. There's a legal jargon that says a city of a certain size within a state can make their own laws, right? So yeah, we had this mandate come down from the city, not from the state, but the city. And so our association countered that, and we were the only group of people with the means or available and gave up our time as individual doctors to put together letters, hire an attorney, hire multiple attorneys, hired a lobbyist to fight and at least know everything that was going on related to these things to protect our members who were within the city. In fact, we didn't just do it for members because it was for chiropractic, right? We wanted all of our chiropractors to be protected, not just our members. And so we went to battle. And that single event alone increased our membership by 100 plus members. So people then suddenly realized, oh, okay, this is why we have an association. Okay, I guess I do need to get on board. But we need for everybody to get on board because there's so much more we can do. If we ever talking to a legislator and they say, well, who do you represent? And if we could turn around and say, we represent every chiropractor in the state of Colorado and all their patients, that's enormous. No legislator at that point can say, no, we're not going to do what you asked for.
Extremely powerful episode tonight, Dr. Craig. There's so much more that we could probably expand on and discuss and move the hearts and minds of an entire profession together. Just want to thank you so much for being open and honest and available and sharing so much from your heart and from the experience of becoming who you are today. Like I mentioned before we started this, before the internet and before, so much information being in front of our faces, the story that you shared with me in your bio, and as I've gotten to know you, is something that's it should be in a journey book of what life really is and how you become accomplished and how you serve and how you help and how you become somebody of value. And I think that your story is very, very valuable, and look forward to becoming a closer friend and colleague of yours. And it's just really encouraging to see that the work that you've done and the practice that you've built for yourself, and also the stance that you have for the future of chiropractic. And such a powerful episode, and just really thankful for you.
Amen, brother. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing for the chiropractic profession. And we did mention earlier, like you said, something about chiropractic miracles. I'd say that every patient that comes through your door is a chiropractic miracle. You get to touch every patient's life, and that is a chiropractic miracle.
Well, I love the fact that I didn't even have to ask you how to close a show, and you already know how to do it.
Oh, Jim, appreciate you. Man. Appreciate chatting with you. Appreciate putting the message out for chiropractic. Love this profession. This profession is going to go on from strength to strength, and the more we challenge, the better we are.
Well, we have to figure out how to get me in on some type of a board out here in the Western Slope.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Craig. Well, have a wonderful night up there in Boulder, and I'll sign off tonight from beautiful Grand Junction. And
Awesome.
I haven't closed out a show yet today. I do 5 typically on Tuesdays. Today I did 4, but I usually close out by telling everybody you're just one story away. Keep hustling. Have a great night tonight. Okay.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.